Shoes. Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website, where you will find some of the most creative African American artists in art, music, animation, comics, novels, short stories, and what have you. And my name is William Hayashi. I will be your host for this evening. And our special guest tonight is, well, actually, nobody knows what time you're listening to this, but our special guest is Roxanne Bland. And I would say probably, let's see, from what you told me, not from what I read, but from what you told me, you're an author and a publisher. Would that be fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And how many? Well, first of all, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And how many other accolades and things can we say about you?
Well, I was just elected president of Broad Universe, which is an international organization of science fiction, fantasy, horror writers that celebrates women, promotes women, and encourages women in this genre. And I am also a life member of the Baltimore Science Fiction Society. And let's see. Well, those are two off the top of my head.
Well, that's good. I mean, and where are you coming to us from tonight?
I'm coming to you right outside of Baltimore, Maryland.
All right. And have you lived there for a long time?
For about 10 years. Prior to that, I lived in Washington, D.C. I grew up in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And, after the hiatuses, for school and things like that, I returned to Washington and just stayed in the area. I had this thought that, well, maybe I should go to Hawaii. But needless to say, I'm still here. And like I said, about 10 years ago, I bought my house right outside of Baltimore, and I've been here ever since.
Wow. And then growing up there, I mean, what kind of, what we would consider a rather normal upbringing? Was there a lot of jail time? Oh, wait, I'm not supposed to talk about that. Did you have what you would consider a fairly normal upbringing?
Well, first of all, normal is a cycle on a washing machine and nothing more. But
well,
yeah,
it's also, no. It's also the straight line setting for my equalizer on my stereo too. So
I see. No, I had a normal childhood. I grew up with three sisters. We all lived in this big house in Northwest Washington, and my parents made sure that we were exposed to museums, the art, and things like that. In fact, I started taking piano lessons. I've been playing piano. I had been playing piano since I was 4, and actually ended up going to a fine arts high school. And that was a lot of fun. And then I went to college, and I still played the piano, but not as much anymore. So I had a musical background. I also wrote. I remember writing a story in elementary school. The only thing I remember about it is that the planet was named Zoine, Zoine, and the fire was black.
Okay.
And it won a prize. So
that's pretty cool. I mean, well, before we even get further than that, when did you know that you had stories in you? I mean, obviously that's pretty young, but you obviously must have self-identified that you were capable of writing. What was kind of your dawning awareness of that?
Well, probably my school English classes and things like that, when they had us write essays and little stories and things like that. I mean, I've always known I had stories inside of me. Some would call them lies, but I've always known I had stories inside me. It was a question of writing them, and I was always I was always more into the music rather than writing stories. I wrote to entertain myself. Let's put it that
right.
way. I had no real idea that I could actually do this and other people would enjoy it.
But you just went and did it. Well, you did it for school,
right.
but still, yeah.
Yeah, I just did it. And, it was something you did to relax.
Sure.
Yeah,
and I envy you. I honestly envy you because, for the longest time, I would say, a long time, I learned how to play drums in high school. But the thing that I really, really, in my heart of hearts, wanted to do was to learn how to play the piano. There's so much versatility and there's so much artistry to it that it's something that I think, I would have loved to have been very, very good at.
Let me tell you a secret.
What's that?
Piano is very easy to play. It is
not
very
when you've got
hard.
6 fingers on each hand.
It is very hard to master.
Okay. I could definitely believe that.
Yeah. So you can learn to play the piano.
You want to hear my fantasy about playing a piano?
What?
You know how Bloomingdale's or the really expensive department stores during the Christmas season, they always have some guy playing the piano in the lobby or, in some atrium or something like that?
Yeah.
My fantasy is to wait until that person goes on break, sit down, and play either one of 2 tunes, either Linus and Lucy by Vince Guaraldi or The In Crowd by Ramsey Lewis. Just play the one song, get up, and walk away. That's my fantasy.
That's a great fantasy.
It is. I think it is. I mean, you just have some guy in his scruffy little winter wear sit down, crack his fingers, and then play either of those songs.
Right.
And then before people have a chance to clap, just get up and get the hell out of there. So that's just one of my fantasies.
That's a wonderful fantasy.
When did you start? Did you start that young on the piano?
I started that young. I started at 4 because my eldest sister. See, this is how it went.
Okay.
When we were 7 years old, we started taking piano lessons. When I was 4, my eldest sister was either it's 7 or 8 or something like that. But anyway, I was imitating her.
Okay, sure.
And I played by ear.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I turned 7, I started taking piano lessons and learned how to read music and all that kind of stuff. So, yes, I have been playing since I was 4, but I didn't start taking formal training until I was 7. And I took formal training all up until I graduated from high school.
Wow.
So,
well, if it's something that gives you joy and you're good at it, the chances are very good that you're going to stick with it.
Well, I have a little problem now. A number of years ago, I was dusting my apartment, a very dangerous occupation, and I ran a piece of glass through my finger.
Oh, did you sever a nerve?
Yeah, it did a little nerve damage. So I haven't really been able to play. Although I will say this, when I press on it these days, it doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe I'll get
good.
another piano and start playing again.
Or, look for a garage sale and get a keyboard first. First of all, the travel is not as hard, to push down on the keys. So, well, I mean, that's great. So now you wrote this first story at the ripe young age of...
I think I was like 10.
10 years old. And did you continue writing, or, was it kind of like one-offs for school? How did that work out?
Well, between school and, just kind of writing for myself. I mean, it's not that I ever showed anybody what I'd written. I usually just wad it up and throw it away. Right. It was just something for me. So I guess I've been writing off and on since I was a kid.
Mhm.
And like I said, it's because I was more into the music growing up that I didn't pursue writing. It was just something to do.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was much older that I started to get kind of serious about it. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I used to write little short stories, again, to entertain myself. And I started wondering, so I go, gee, I wonder if these are any good. I never submitted, they all got thrown away. But, you start, that thought came to me. I thought, I wonder if these are any good. I wonder if I'm any good. So, a number of years passed, and I had pretty much stopped writing at all. And then in 2001, I started working on, I had an idea for what is now the Underground.
Mhm.
And these are I have to say, these are characters that had been floating around in my head, for years. They took on different guises.
Mhm.
But essentially they were the same characters. And in the Underground, I finally put them down on paper.
Right.
And that was a fun book to write. It was very cathartic. It was therapy for me. At the time I wrote it, one of my beta readers wanted to know why was it so violent. And I told her it's because I'm angry. And I had some things happen in my life that, made me very angry. And it came out in my writing. It came out in the story. I mean, it's werewolves don't eat anybody in this story or anything like that, but he gets his butt kicked, by his soon-to-be lady love, the alien.
Right.
There's other violence, that's threading its way through the book.
Sure.
And,
no, I can relate. I mean, sometimes when you draw from your personal experiences, not only is it a more personal write, but the writing often tends to be more visceral because it comes from someplace other than just intellectual endeavor.
Yeah. I think you've hit it. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, all of my writing is based upon, anger and rage, but what I've done is I have carefully covered that up because I don't think anybody wants to read a book about an angry black man with issues. You know what I mean? Or read a book by an angry black man who has issues. So it's like 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I think that if you use those passions and those emotions effectively to paint a good literary picture, it probably works out fine. I can't very well, write a book that says kill Whitey, because that's probably just not politically correct. You're not going to get HarperCollins to publish that. There's a whole lot of nonsense behind that is just not helpful. But if you write about the fact that there's some black people who are technologically advanced who just wanted to get away from white people so much that they moved to the moon, that's a story. So, I mean, now when you talk about, your anger was a driving force for what you wrote, how did you coach that anger? How did you couch that anger so that it drove a story but didn't overwhelm a reader?
Well, I think the love angle in the story softens the anger that permeates the story. I mean, when the book opens, our werewolf is in a really bad way, and he's not just angry; he's enraged. When the story opens,
wait, can I ask a question though?
Sure.
Of you and everybody in the chat room, has anybody ever read about a happy werewolf? Okay, please continue your story. We'll take your answers offline.
Well, when the story opens, the alien is at the end of her rope.
Okay.
And as the story progresses, they find each other, and their anger, with each other, they are able to channel their anger elsewhere and find love.
So the commonality of their experience and the focus of their feelings builds a commonality that leads to love. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend or lover.
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Okay.
You could put it that way, yeah. And of course, by the end, he's a very happy werewolf. That's why I laughed.
Mm-hmm. No, I got to read me one of those. No, I'm serious. I mean, think about all of the film ever since the creation of the genre, and think about all of the books, all of the stories, all of the characterizations. You don't often find. I can't remember when you ever found a happy werewolf. So which is one of the reasons why I asked you about that, knowing a little bit about how it ended.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I believe everybody deserves some happiness, including werewolves and aliens, even vampires.
I like the alien touch though. I really like that.
I was thinking when I wrote that, when I put the alien in,
right?
I was thinking to myself, what would make this story stand out? What would make this? I mean, it's okay. We got a werewolf, we got a witch, and we have a vampire. What would make this story stand out? And I said, why don't I make her an alien? Why don't I make her character an amnesiac alien who may be a serial killer? Why don't I make her an alien?
Your people certainly have issues, don't they? I mean, when you first said the trio, I was thinking you were going to say and a midget, but and that's the thing. I mean, I think that's what people today are going to struggle with forever, especially if they write in these genres, because we have such well-defined mainstream understandings and expectations about what a werewolf is and what a vampire is and what a zombie is. And there's the struggle because you would if you're going to tackle any of those genres, you want your story to be unique and to draw people in. And that's a dual-edged sword, I think, because, since we've established what I'm doing air quotes in my own house by myself, if you've established what the expectations are for any one of those, in our culture the way that we have and in modern entertainment, then when you go and you want to do something unique, first of all, you have to fight everybody when they say, well, that's not what a werewolf is. And you can't really just poke them in the eye and go, shut up, I'm writing what I'm writing. Because the expectations of your audience are so important in at least trying to be a successful writer. Right. So, I mean, throwing in the alien twist I thought it was brilliant. I mean, that's just me. If I was really, really smart, though, I probably wouldn't be doing the show. But, I mean, seriously, no, I'm serious. But finding a new hook, I think that's what everybody struggles with.
Well, I think I also, you were talking about expectations and things like that, and let me back up. Let me explain something.
Okay.
When I was growing up, and when I was a young adult, you walk in a bookstore, and you see a section called sci-fi fantasy.
Right.
Well, I didn't know those were two different genres. I thought there was a genre called sci-fi fantasy, and that's what I did.
Right.
I wrote an urban fantasy that happens to have an alien in it.
Mhm.
So,
and there's nothing wrong with that. But then what happens
but
when?
like you said, with people's expectations.
Yeah.
You know, this is a story about a werewolf. What's the alien doing in here?
Right.
You know, this is a story about an alien. What's the werewolf doing in here?
Yeah. Are these alien werewolves? Are these alien whatever? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And see, the thing is, publishers, bookstores, online repositories, and online commerce sites.
Mhm.
You know, they want to be able to pigeonhole things very, very neatly.
Right.
You know, that's partly for our benefit as creatives, so that people can find our stuff easier. But what if you do something that's truly creative? You know, and then you don't fit in. You know, I fought the longest to keep from having people classify dark side, you know, my dark side books as science fiction. I wanted it to be speculative fiction because that's more highfalutin and it's less pigeonholy and this and that and the other thing. But you know, you ask somebody, well, what's speculative fiction? They go, I don't know, you know, and that no, I mean, but that makes it truly hard for one to set oneself up. So
Right.
you know, you bite the bullet, you accept what is, you know, what the expectation is, and you hope for the best.
Right. And you know,
let me ask you. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was
going to
say
say
in reading. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go. No, it's your show.
I was going to say in reading the reviews. Nowhere does that come out more than in reading the reviews. There are people. It's like people either loved it or they hated it.
Oh, nothing in the middle.
There was very, very little in the middle. And you know, one woman wrote, "This was the weirdest book I've ever read." To which I say thank you, but you know, it was, you know, one woman wrote that she hated the characters. Of course, the problem was she didn't say why. I would love to have known why she hated the characters. But anyway, you know, but then, like I said, other people just absolutely loved it. So, you know, it's kind of one of those things. Like you said, I wrote a story that people can't pigeonhole.
Mhm.
And therefore, since they can't pigeonhole it, you know, there are those who embrace it because it can't be pigeonholed, and there are those who step back because it can't be pigeonholed. So
right.
I think that's why there's no middle ground.
Yeah, and you know, people when they go and look for something to read, you know, they already know what genre they want.
Right.
And they even know what story they want.
Right.
And people tend to read the same kind of story. So if someone's into romances, they generally shop for more romances. You know, not a lot of people cross out of their genre. And if they mistakenly read your book or start to read your book based upon a misperception or maybe an inaccurate whatnot, you know, an inaccurate description from somebody else or a review, yeah, then you get their unhappiness laid on you in kind of an unfair way. You know, because you know, it's like, oh, you know, I went to buy a car and I wanted a Porsche, but I got a VW instead, and then, you know, then they're upset with their car, not realizing that they did A, manage their expectations, or B, check out what they were buying. And so that, I mean, that is hard. And you know, I'm looking at the Underground on Amazon, and I'm looking at the reviews, and you know, you can tell that some people were a little taken aback, but then once they saw that it was different, some people really liked that. You know,
right.
So you're at the vagaries of the intellect of your audience. And sometimes that's
exactly,
not such a good
and sometimes
thing.
that's not a good thing. Well, I will say I did get 2 5-star reviews in England, so.
Oh well, you know,
somebody
the
in
English are different.
The UK likes my books.
Yeah, you know, I haven't even checked to see what Amazon England says about me. Anyhow, okay, so you've got this one out here. You've got a little bit of feedback.
Uh-huh.
Tell us a little bit about the process you went through to start the story. And I mean, you mentioned, I don't remember if it was on the show or something. You know, we've talked before, letting the audience know we've shared some hangout time. But did you have a story first, or did you have characters first that you wove into a story? Tell us a little bit about your process.
Characters were woven into a story.
Okay.
I'm not a plotter. I'm a pantser.
Uh-huh.
I had a general idea of, I knew who my characters were. I had a general idea of where I wanted them to start, where I wanted them to be in the middle, and I knew where I wanted them to be, but I knew where I wanted them to be at the end.
Okay.
So basically, it was a matter of crafting my story to get from A to B to C. And crafting it in such a way that, you know, it was a story and not a random collection of chapters. I was very lucky in that my teacher, and I still refer to, or mentor, if you will, was an editor who specialized in writing thrillers. Why he took me on, I don't know. I guess he saw something in my very, very, very first draft that I actually wrote in 4 months. But he saw something.
Wait, you wrote the first draft of this book in 4 months?
Yes. And
how many words is it?
Oh, I don't remember, but I'll tell you, William, the present underground is very different from that very, very first draft, because what he taught me was, this is how you have to shape your character. This is how he taught me about knowing your character so well you know how they're going to react. You know, you don't want to do X to the werewolf and have him react as A when he really should have reacted as B. He said he says things like that don't ring true, and your readers will spot it.
Right.
And so he taught me all this stuff. And in between teaching me, well, actually not in between, while he was teaching me all this stuff, I wrote the book. I can't tell you how many times he made me write and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite chapter 1 until it was to his satisfaction, not finished, to his satisfaction, that I could move on to chapter 2.
Well, that is a hell of a mentor.
Yeah, he was really he was really something, and he told me when we first talked on the phone, he goes, "I'm going to teach you how to write a bestseller." And
do you have his phone number? Hang on, let me get a pen.
No, he's retired. He's retired. No, he's not.
Okay, all right. Okay.
He's not. No, he's not editing anymore. But that's what he told me, and I think that, you know, his obviously his lessons have stuck because I'm working on my second novel. Right. So, which is very different than the first.
For anybody who's interested, I did look it up. Your Underground is probably somewhere between 180 and 200,000 words.
Yeah.
It's 466 pages.
Yeah.
That's a respectable sized book.
My current work in progress is something like 500. No, it's not that many. Oh, I can't remember how many it is, but it's thick. It's big.
Sure.
It's bigger than the Underground. But this time, and the thing about the Underground was really funny is that there were parts, of the story that I left out because I thought, well, nobody's going to want to read about that. It's going to make the book too big. So, can you believe that? I mean, geez.
Well, I mean, yes and no. I mean, I was not lucky enough to have a mentor like you did. When I sat down and started writing a book, I didn't know jack I mean, seriously, I really didn't know. And I sat down and I started writing a book, and then I said to myself, maybe you should look up and see what people say about writing a novel. And I got books by a few books by John Gardner. He's a great American novelist, and he writes books on writing. But by the time I finished the most important part of the first book that I read, and that was, if it doesn't move the story forward, take it out. I was up to 330,000 words, and fortunately, I had an editor who cut a third of that out. But
right.
I mean, a lot of I wish I would have maybe taken more English classes or something. Although by the time I started writing, I would have forgotten all of that anyway. But it so helps to have, that kind of assistance, that kind of, like I said, a mentor. But you had been writing for a long time. I think the only thing that you had done that probably didn't serve you was you didn't save that work. You know what I mean? So that you could go back and either, if it was good, you could have cleaned it up. If it was, or you could have, seen your progression or maybe learned from it. But man, falling upon that kind of editor is such a great, great, lucky happen chance.
Extremely
and now,
lucky.
Yeah, and now that you don't have him, do you feel facile enough? Do you feel grounded enough that the second novel that you're writing is going to still benefit from so much, from what he helped you with in the first book?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I hear his voice in my head, like you said, does this chapter move the story forward? What are you going to put in this chapter that moves the story forward? Why is it in here?
That, yeah, and that's common. I mean, that's exactly what Gardner said. And now that I've spoken to other, people who teach about writing, they all agree. If it doesn't serve moving the story forward, don't put it in there.
And he actually taught me to, and you take it not just by chapter, you take it sentence by sentence.
Mm-hmm.
Does this sentence move the story forward? So what if it makes sense? That's not the point. Does it move the story forward? And if it doesn't,
right,
take it out. I mean, there were, I believe that all of my chapters moved the story forward, but there were many sentences, within that I either, had to rewrite or just take out. Because they did not add to the story. And so, and of course, it's at the editors now, but what I did is I tightened it up as best I could, and hopefully the editor won't have a whole lot to do. I can't say, it won't come back dipped in red ink, but that was my goal, that the editor wouldn't have very much to do, because I was listening to my mentor in my head telling me, does this really work?
Mm-hmm.
And also too, I guess he also taught me. He taught me to be honest. Is not really quite what I'm looking at, but it is a type of honesty. Being honest with yourself and being honest with your craft. Don't get hung up on your own words. If you got to cut them, cut them. Be ruthless.
Oh man, I ran into that very problem with this third book that of my trilogy. I got into a real groove writing, and I liked the way the story was going and the way everybody behaved. And then I got to a point where I realized, this is not going to lead us to the ending that I wanted for the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had to delete 4 chapters, which, I mean,
Yep.
it killed
It
me.
hurt.
It was the first time I ever had, and my chapters are like 4,000 words, 4,500 words, generally speaking, and to get rid of 20,000 words, oh man, I didn't cry or anything because I don't want anybody calling me bad names, but I'm sitting there just shaking my head, and I knew they were not going to do me any good. There was nothing in there that was going to work. You know how you try to salvage something because you put in the effort?
Yes.
Yeah. So I cut it, and I was going to delete it, but I just wasn't strong enough. I put it in another. I put it in a folder someplace else. Yeah, well, no, that'll never work. And you know, now that I'm done with that book, I'm not gonna go back or anything. But it was very hard, and I think that, you know, I think creatives are just as, I don't want to say ego-driven in a bad way, but you know, if you write something and you write it well, there's ownership. There's validation. There's all kinds of things tied up in it. And then if all of a sudden you find out that you have to yank the rug out from under your own feet,
right?
You know, I think that there's a strength in there if you're able to just do it and go, oh, this is ridiculous, and cut that crap out.
Right.
But man, it just about killed me, as they say. So
maybe you can make a story out of what you cut.
Oh yeah, well, I don't know. As you said that, I said the first thing that went through my mind was, oh, maybe I should just go open it up and look at what you had written. But no, because it was bad enough that I didn't have to do it, and I should have the stones enough to just say, hey, you know, you kept yourself from making a bad mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's essentially what it is. You know, if you and you know, I understand what you said about being in love with your words. Because I had a love affair in my first book, and you know, they had some great repartee, and there was this scene and that scene, and you know, my editor said, you know, this is not moving anything along. This is you playing with yourself, and I was mad at her for a long time because it was like, well, that's a lot of work. I mean, when you cut out a third of a book and say, here, this is what makes sense.
Yeah.
It was the first thing I wrote, so of course, the very first thing that I felt was that it was an invalidation of self.
Yes.
You know, and so, I mean, writing is obviously a singular exercise unless you're doing the collaborative work. And as a singular exercise, I think we all have an emotional buy-in to what we're doing that sometimes makes it very, very hard to be objective. I mean, that's just my observation of most people.
That is 100% true. I think that is 100% true. My writer hat and my editor hat are two very different things. And sometimes I hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
You know, by cutting stuff out. But, you know, as my mentor taught me, it's if people are going to, the worst thing you can do to your reader is to bore them.
Or waste their time. And money. Waste their time.
Right. To me, that's one and the same.
Yeah, okay.
And he said that's the worst thing you can do to your reader. Don't do that to your reader. You know, you have to do whatever it is you have to do to make your story interesting, to grip their attention and keep their attention. And if that means you have to cut, then you're going to have to cut. I don't care how much it means to you. And I you know, and he's right. You know, but let me tell you kind of a funny story about the Underground.
Okay.
There's a scene in there, a BDSM scene, and involving the witch. And I remember we were talking. He says, "Did you just put this in for shock value? Because if you did, you need to take it out." Mm-hmm. And I told him, wait. There's a reason why she's tied down to the mattress, and you know, and how she's going to get out and all that kind of stuff. And as it turns out, it was the straw that broke the camel's back, to use a cliche, for the werewolf, because they were lovers. And
okay.
it was like, you know, this is it. Get out of my face. Get out of my life. So that was.
Hang on, I'm just taking some notes. What page was that on?
Oh, William, I don't remember.
I'm kidding.
No, you're not.
No, I am. I am. But see, you. On the other hand, when people say, "Hey, I heard you wrote a great love scene in your book that men and women like," and they go, "Well, where is it?" And I tell them, "Oh, it's right in chapter 40." See, I can tell them, but you gotta think of that in terms of marketing, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, and so that begs the question: what age group were you targeting? Is this definitely an adult book?
This is an adult book, yes.
Okay.
My characters are all in they vary in age because, like, my werewolf is 29.
Yeah.
The vampire is like 500. The witch is in her mid-40s, though she looks like she's just gotten out of college. That's because witches don't age the way humans do. None of them do, actually. But so the youngest of the alien would I guess if you translated, planetary rotation and all that kind of stuff, she'd probably be about 75 or 80 in human years.
Right.
But,
so you've got adult characters with adult themes.
Yes. Oh, most definitely. This is not. In fact, there is I put a disclaimer on it. Mature content, because I wanted people to know, because the sex is graphic. And it's in your face. And I wanted people to understand that this is what they're getting into and not be shocked.
Yeah. I speaking of mixing genres, I just had a great idea to do kind of like a science fiction BDSM book, and it's going to be called Interplanetary Gray. I just thought of that right now. Instead of 50 Shades, we're going. Never mind. I'm gonna make some notes while we're talking here. But I mean,
actually, I did read a science fiction BDSM book.
Well, you know what?
It was interesting.
There's an anthology out, and I've got it on the shelf, and I can't. Well, I could. I don't feel like getting up and going and looking for it. Or it might be downstairs. But there have been anthologies of sci-fi sex and sex-based stories.
Right.
And some of them are really interesting. I mean, you have more mainstream, like Ursula. I can't remember her last name. She did Left Hand of Darkness. Those kinds of things.
Ursula Le Guin.
Yeah. But then there are those that are just more blatantly sexual, like a society where sex is mandatory.
right.
from like the age of 13 on, it's mandatory. And so, I mean, it's interesting to explore those themes, but like you said, people should know what they're getting into when they either purchase the book or pick it up from the library or whatever, and not be surprised. Because, you get a lot of people who, well, I think the best example that I can think of was Piers Anthony wrote a book called Firefly.
Yes.
And so many people made the charge of child pornography against him for that book because they didn't understand his intent and probably didn't read very carefully. So, I mean, have you run into any readers or instances where that was such a big deal?
No, I can't really say I have. I think, reading some of the reviews, I think there's like an undercurrent that some readers were put off by the sex.
Right.
But they didn't mention it in so many words. Basically, they said something to the effect like, well, I didn't like the book because XXXXX, and there was too much sex.
Okay. And they add that on at the very end, even though that might be the one thing that, I know.
Yes, exactly. And so I'd be honest with you, I rather enjoyed reading the bad reviews. kind of gave me insight as to who was out there reading my book and what their expectations were,
right,
and how my book fulfilled those expectations, or in these cases did not. One thing I did not do was, at first I did, because it was my first book, and I wanted everybody to love it. But after I read, I guess, the third or fourth negative review, I realized that this was not something to be taken personally.
Well, that's the hardest part that most creatives go through, because even people who I've had people ask me, could you critique my work? Can I send you something for you to look at? And I go, okay, fine. And then when I give them what I think is an honest assessment, and it's not brutal or anything,
right?
But the thing that we talked about earlier, which was your work being a validation or invalidation of self, depending upon how somebody approaches talking to you about it. There has to be kind of an intellectual high ground where you can sit up on top of the mountain, look down at your work, and not feel, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune because somebody says something negative about it. And that's
right.
a real tough place to get. A lot of people don't get there. And, what's unfortunate is, okay, let's say somebody who had different expectations about your work reads your work and then is upset because you did not meet their expectations. And then you're sitting there and you're going, well, oh, wow, they hated my work, so they must not like me. And it's not that at all. It's just a matter of this person didn't like what you. What book out there does everybody like? That's the other thing. Well, okay, Green Eggs and Ham. Who doesn't like Green Eggs and Ham?
Okay, Dr. Seuss, yes.
But seriously, there are people out there who think, what's his name? Stephen King writes at like a 14-year-old, for just about all of his books, except maybe some very, very rare exceptions.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that Stephen King is a bad writer. It just means that, this one reader thinks that. So, yeah, I think the thing that you mentioned earlier, just you have to be able to understand a critique and to pay attention to it. I mean, man, look how lucky you were to have that mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the very same time they're helping you be a better writer, he was also teaching you to look at the writing from an effective perspective rather than emotional ownership.
Right.
So I think that's a great place where people, every writer, every creative has to get. I imagine it's like, somebody who does what they think is a great masterpiece of painting, something abstract that means something to them, and then, some Philistine looks at it and goes, oh, too much red. You know what I mean?
Or worse, it doesn't match the drapes.
Oh, man, there you go. And so you cannot take that as some sort of invalidation of self. You have to have a stronger ego than that. Mm-hmm. But that's a tough place to get. I mean, there are lessons that have to be learned to get there. There's a maturation process, I believe, that one has to go through to understand that, A, it's not all about you, and B, step back a little bit because you're not going to please everybody. I mean, those are two very important things. So, and I fell victim to it. I got my only bragging, my only 1-star review on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And when I saw somebody put a 1-star review up there, I got mad at them. I got very upset. And I, at first I thought, well, how could, because of course everything else is 4- and 5-star reviews. And then when I read it and detached myself from, oh, this is an invalidation of William, oh, William wrote a bad book, oh, whatever, then I realized, hey, this is a white guy who doesn't understand that black folks, if they're presented with the opportunity to leave the planet and not be around white folks anymore, a whole lot of us would go.
Right.
And I thought, this is actually a perfect 1-star review because this illustrates, this validates my thesis. Yep. But it took 2 weeks before I got there. That's a long-ass time in my years, in my days, in my hours, in my seconds. Anybody's life. 2 weeks of angst over anything is a long time. So,
right.
Yeah, those lessons are tough to learn, but I think they make you a better writer in the long run.
I think they do too. I mean, you know, one of the things that I learned, one of the things I learned from the underground and my experience with bad reviews is that, you know, even bad reviews can, unless somebody's just being a troll,
right.
even bad reviews contain nuggets that you can take with you.
Well, yeah, and perspective. I mean, that's a perspective. Someone gave you their perspective.
Exactly.
And
now, am
I
going to write for them? You know, the next book I write? No, but it's good to know that perspective is out there,
right.
and that and you know and who knows? You know, that perspective may work its way into the writing. I don't know. I mean, because you know, I got to sit down and write it first. But
well, yeah, and it could be an element you never thought of too.
Exactly. So no, there you know, there's a lot more to this writing business. And you write, how nice.
Yeah.
You know, like you just sit down and pound out a book. Well, no, there's a little bit more that goes into it. You know, I mean, especially the I think the more you write, the more what's the word I want? I don't really want to use perspective, but that might be the only word I know. The more perspective you get with your writing and its relationship to the outside world. Did that make any sense whatsoever?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think from a creative's perspective, I don't know if I'll ever get there, but what I'm trying to get to is the point where, to borrow a beer term, where I am fully croissant, where I am seasoned, where I have I have perspective, I have storytelling skills, where, you know, this thing that I write now is so much better than what I wrote before because I have learned my craft that much better.
Right.
Is that fair to say where you were coming from?
Yes.
Okay. Here, let me take a quick break here, even though it's a little bit early. You're listening to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. You should really check it out. There's a whole lot of content there for those of you who have never been there. We're picking up this show as a podcast. Stop in, log in, and check out some of the vanguard of the new millennium in terms of science fiction, fantasy, and horror. That is black themed. That's essentially what we, you know, has been, the site has been put together for. Tonight's special guest is Roxanne Bland. She's an author. And the next part I want to talk to you about is you are now a publisher, correct?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about, tell us a little, I'm sorry, what press?
Black Rose Press.
Black Rose Press. I'll pop up the link.
Black Rose is one word.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to tell them, this has nothing to do with roses. It's just Black Rose.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, people use all kinds of words for different things now, especially when you think in terms of internet-based marketing and stuff like that. Sometimes you'll see a word where it would have a certain meaning to you, and then, you know, it's completely different. So what, you know, for you to have put out one book, one novel, and then now you have a publishing company. What was the impetus to push that forward? Well,
we were talking about how the underground was so different that nobody could pigeonhole it. And I decided that was probably, after talking to a number of people about this, I decided that might be the reason why I wasn't getting bites on my book.
Okay.
And I was just about to start sending it out to, so I'd run through all of the agents, and I got turned down. I was just about to start sending it off to small publishers when I thought to myself, why don't I publish this myself, but why don't I start my own publishing company? And I did the research on starting a publishing company and, what it takes, what you need, and put together, a very scaled down version, still scaled down version of Black Rose Press. And that's how I ended up publishing The Underground. It's published through Black Rose Press. Now, if that makes me a self-published author, then fine. But it's published through. But the name on the bottom of the page is Black Rose Press.
Mm-hmm.
The same with my second book. I will be publishing that through Black Rose Press, and I'm using myself as a guinea pig, because what I want to do with Black Rose Press is I want to publish science fiction, fantasy, horror, weird, bizarro, speculative fiction by people of color. And I want to try my best to bring those books out into the mainstream. I am so sick of there can be only one. And I don't believe that's true. I would like to do things like go to BEA.
Right.
And, have a booth where people can see that there are people of color out here writing science fiction. The Latino world, oh my goodness, it's huge.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So, so putting out feelers and things like that. I mean, I've got websites. When Black Rose Press is begins accepting submissions, I'm going to go through the Carl Brandon Society. I'd never heard of them. There are, Black Science Fiction Society. I'd never heard of them.
Right.
And I mean, until I went looking. And the world I see we'll have Williams books right next to Isaac Asimov. Of course, that's alphabetically not correct, but we won't worry about that.
Well, I get you. So that begs the question. Okay, as an author, I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, okay, what is your process for giving me better visibility than I'm getting for myself? And even though you're just starting out, I know you're just starting out, and I don't ask that as an unfair question. I ask that kind of in the service of, have you looked at and have you refined your business model yet, or are you still kind of in the planning stages for that?
It's still in the planning stages. I'm working on getting some of the other pieces together, but one of the things I was thinking about is I'm researching the net. I'm a strong believer, let me back up 1 second. I'm a strong believer in virtual book tours.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm researching virtual book tour companies that, they have to specialize in speculative fiction. I mean, right. I'm not going to a book tour company that does romance. And set up a working relationship with them. I want to look at their resume. I want to see what they do. How many, when you set up these tours, I mean, who's looking at the blogs? How many?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it makes no sense for me to, have one of my authors up on a blog and there are only 6 people following it. I mean, so.
Yeah, no, I get you. And that is the biggest challenge that independent creators, who don't have a publisher, who don't have a marketing firm, a lot of these very, very fundamental needs that you have as an entrepreneurial content creator, those are the challenges. Those are,
right.
I mean, and so those are the things that you're actually seriously doing some investigating and research into right now, correct?
Right. Right. Because it's, one of the things I learned with the Underground is that I've written this book. It's a damned good book, but now I have to market it.
Right.
And I knew absolutely nothing about marketing. And there were some things that I learned, and some things worked, some things didn't. But what I want to do is to be able to put together a marketing package, that where I can channel all of my authors. And like I said, that would include the virtual book tour. One of the things I would expect my authors to do is to go to conventions and to be out there. Hi, I'm so-and-so, have a table set up.
Right.
That would be sponsored by Black Rose Press. And if Black Rose Press has a presence, then I would expect, authors in the area, if there are any, I would expect authors in the area to come to the table and help work the table, let people see you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's all of that. All of that is good. The pressing of the flesh is always good because, there's nothing more exciting for a content consumer than to meet someone that they may have read.
Exactly.
So, I mean, but, the bottom line question is, how do you fund this, this sort of endeavor effectively so that those sorts of things are possible? At one time I was in the middle of writing a book. I was dead broke, and then there was some convention in Detroit, and I really wanted to go just because I wanted to meet some people who I've only met online. But then I thought about it. Okay, you could drive there. That's X amount of dollars of gas. Then I looked at Megabus, which is actually like just riding in a 1930s Somalian village on wheels.
Right.
And Megabus was like $11 one way. Yep. But then I thought about it. Who are you going to be with on that bus? And I don't want to say I'm an elitist snob, but I'm an elitist snob, and I just couldn't do it. So I mean, it's very tough when you think in terms of that. This is why the Big Six control about 96% of all the books published in this country. 96% of all these books are published by 6 publishers.
Right.
And they have money that you and I will never see, and that's what makes them able to muscle their books. They get preferred placement in Barnes and Noble.
Yep.
They they do all kinds of advertising that we can't afford to do as independents.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, I'm saving up for $13,000 right now, and hopefully I'll have it by September, October. And that $13,000 is going to go for a full-page ad in the New York book section for 4 consecutive weekends.
Yeah,
that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
but that $13,000 will probably translate into 20,000 units of my book sold.
Right.
And not looking at it as a value proposition in terms of cash, because that's not what's important to me. I know that's really kind of shitty to say, but it really isn't important to me. I don't care at this point in my career how many books I publish. I care about getting my name out, which is why, a publisher is so important, because a publisher should have the experience and the skills to get your name out, because that's
Right.
the challenge. So, if I do a provocative full-page ad in the New York Times book section, what will happen is I will have two classes. I decided what my theme across the top of the page it'll be. It'll be like, forget Star Wars, forget Star Trek. The Dark Side trilogy is the sci-fi tale for the new millennium. Okay, so I'm going to get two classes of people who will buy. I will get people who will buy anything that's advertised like that in the New York Times book section, no matter what. Most of those people don't even read those books. They just put them on their coffee table so other people will see them. Oh, what's this? Oh, yeah, that was in the New York Times, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm going to get the second class of people who are going to want to tear me a new one, because how dare you say that your stuff is as good as Star Wars or Star Trek? But I don't care. I honestly don't care who buys for what reason, as long as a unit gets sold.
Yes.
But I can't do – I mean, think about $13,000 for an ad.
Yep. I know exactly what's – and, and that's the other thing. I mean, I know exactly what I'm up against, and which is why I have decided at this point. I mean, at the start, is to go ebook,
right?
Because the overhead is so low, which leaves you money to do other things.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Do you have concerns? Okay, obviously Underground is available as an ebook.
Yep.
Do you have concerns about piracy? Okay, so one person gets a copy of the Underground, and all of a sudden it's, torrents are available everywhere where they can get your book for free.
Right.
What are your thoughts about that? I want to know both as a content creator and also as a publisher.
Well, I think it can be I think it can be summed up in one word. It's theft.
Yeah, but
I think the only person who not that I don't think he so much defends it, is basically says, well, I think it's a good thing, is Neil Gaiman. Apparently, he does not mind being pirated.
And how big is his bank account?
Very big.
Exactly. But for middle class, I'm middle class. I'll be in the 1% by the end of the year, but I'm middle class right now. No, I am. I got plans, girl. I got plans. But I can't be as cavalier, or I don't have the courage of that conviction for myself.
I agree.
I don't want to all of a sudden. I mean, not that I cruise torrent sites, because that would be wrong. But I would hate for a friend of mine to say, "Hey, did you know there's like 342,000 people downloading Discovery right now?" And I'd be mad I would be very upset.
I would be too.
Because not just the revenue, but the theft aspect of it, the feeling of violation, the this, the that, all the good, the bad, and the ugly about that. And that's one of the reasons why none of my books are available in electronic format yet. Because the part B side to that is I am also looking for a publisher. I'd like it to be one of the top 6.
Right.
Okay, there's a good chance that will happen. And my feeling is that because a lot of these e-book publishing contracts and agreements allow a vendor to sell your e-book in perpetuity.
Oh.
And so if that's the case, then that makes me less valuable to HarperCollins, because they're going, well, we're going to handle William. Wait, we don't get any money for the e-books. You see what I'm saying? So there's a value calculation there too.
Right. I don't. I've read some of these contracts and things like that, and they're just egregious.
They are. And because
I don't.
Go ahead.
I don't plan to have. Well, I have I still have to have a deep conversation with an intellectual property lawyer. But my plan is to keep the rights for your ebook and any print book. I might, if it sells well enough, then we could maybe do a POD, to start with. And I would say all rights would revert to the author in 5 to 7 years, something like that. I would not keep rights in perpetuity because I wouldn't want anybody to keep the rights to my book in perpetuity.
Well,
and I think it's just egregious that these publishers do this, and it's just heartrending that these authors sign because somebody signed my book.
Well, the reason why they do that is because authors, content creators, are such desperate creatures.
That's what I mean.
They will sign a bill of goods if they think it's going to make them as popular as these companies tell them they're going to be.
Exactly. And there are no guarantees. But, you're taking a chance on me, but I'm taking a chance on you. And but still, I read this one contract that was so egregious. It was on the web. I couldn't believe they actually put it up there. I was like, this is highway robbery.
Well, you should have seen the first Kindle contracts because I was looking at them, at the time because I was looking to broaden my distribution. And when I looked at those first Kindle contracts and they said that Amazon retained the right to, once they signed you to a contract to distribute your electronic work in perpetuity, I said, well, I said some uncharitable things.
Yeah.
But then I understood. Every single author I've met is desperate. They're desperate for validation and they're desperate to get their name out there. And if they don't look carefully at the contracts they sign, and you know what? I don't know 2 in 100 authors who retain legal services.
Exactly.
On a regular basis for all their stuff. Most authors are just so stupid, they think they're smart enough to look out for themselves, not realizing that some of the smartest people on the planet and people with political clout have already figured out 6 ways from Sunday how to steal from them.
Exactly.
Okay? Yeah, and that arrogance is what gets so many people in trouble. And people laugh at me. They go, oh, you really ought to make your books e-books. I go, nope, not until somebody else picks me up and then let them do the heavy lifting, and I just receive the royalties no matter what.
Right.
And like you said, I have a print-on-demand fulfillment house handling all my stuff. They also handle all my shipping. They handle the books that go to Amazon and all of that. Because you know what? I don't want to keep a whole bunch of books in my damn basement and every 2 days have to run to the post office, after boxing up a book and send it out. So
yeah.
Yes, I am getting less of a royalty per book.
Right.
But I don't have to put up with the other stuff that
right.
Publisher should take care of you. So I mean, the business of doing business as a publisher has got to be there. That adds a whole nother level of complexity because what you're doing is you're now the fulfillment house for your people, and in your investigations of being a publisher, how are you looking at the infrastructure that you have to have in order to do fulfillment for your clients?
Well, that's why I want to do POD. I mean, if I'm going to have print books, that's why I want to do POD to start. Because when I found out what a print run, a small print run, 5,000 books is a small print run.
Right.
I nearly fainted. I said to myself, but there's no way I can handle that. And if I've got 2 authors, that's 10,000 books.
Mhm.
And I'm not willing at this point. I'm not willing to rent warehouse space.
Right.
So that's why that was the impetus for me going ebook. And if it, like I said, if it sells well enough, then we'll put out a couple of print copies, and we'll do it POD. Now I will have, like for example, I mentioned going to BEA. I will have print copies for that.
Sure.
You know, but a print copy is not necessarily something that is going to, when you buy the book, you're not necessarily buying a print copy. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And I think, you know, there people have, I forget what it stands for, but DRM protected.
Digital rights management.
There you go.
Copy protection in English.
Yes. I mean, there's always DRM protection. But, you know, there are people on both sides of the fence on that, because some people say, well, what if I want to share, you know, I got this. They think they should be able to share an ebook the same way they share a paperback.
Well, no, they can. You just have to hand over your Kindle to whomever. And see, they don't want to do that. They want to just be able to do an unlimited number of copies. Oh, man, you know, I want my book club to read this, so I'm just going to make copies for everybody.
Exactly.
And
that is a whole different story.
Right. And I have friends who said, oh, yeah, you know, I loved your book so much, I wanted, you know, so-and-so to read it, so I gave them mine. I go, well, why didn't you just buy them another copy? You know, because, of course, that's me and thinking in terms of marketing, but you're right. People have such entitlement issues over what they think is right and wrong, and not necessarily what may be legal. You know, they just figure, well, this must be right because I can do it.
Yeah.
Or I, you know, nobody's going to say anything about it because I can. You know, that sort of thing.
Right.
And that's a tough thing, and that's that's the main reason why none of my books are in ebook format at this point. I think I would do DRM protection for all of the books, of the ebook. Right.
I mean, if that's how I'm going to sell them, and if that's, I mean, DRM protection not only protects me, it protects my authors.
Yeah, it does. And they say, oh, well, you're going to sell less copies, and you go, yeah, but I'm also going to have a lot fewer stolen as well too.
That's right. You won't see me up on pirate sites.
Yeah. Now, okay, so right now you're your only client, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
About how long down the line do you think you're going to be at the point where you will feel facile enough and learned enough to pick up other people as clients?
Well, first, I want to get my second novel published. I want to get it out of the way.
And you're gonna publish it through
Black
your
Rose
own
Press. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Again, this is again using myself as the guinea pig to learn the business.
Right.
And I had originally said January of 16, but I think it's more likely going to be June or July.
Okay.
About a year from now, I want to start accepting. Submissions.
And in the meantime, what you're going to be doing is learning the infrastructure?
Yes. Yes. I am just sent a check off to, well, you know, what qualifies as a check these days, to the Independent Publishers Association. That is a wonderful organization where folks like me who are just starting out can learn from people who have been there and who can teach you the ropes and try to avoid the mistakes that they have made. It's a wonderful little organization.
Okay.
And so at least they seem to be. I mean, I haven't met anybody in person or anything like that, but it seems like it would be a good thing for me to join as a newbie publisher.
Yeah, and there's a lot of value in networking because you know what? Nobody wants to there are people who have big egos, but really nobody wants to repeat the mistakes of other people, especially if they're simple to avoid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I can do that, then if I can avoid someone else's mistakes, then more power to me.
And
more power to my authors. So, but that's what I want. That's my vision of Black Rose Press. I don't know if I'll ever be huge or anything like that, but I'm not. But then I'm not trying to be. I'm right now. My vision is starting small, and then we'll see where it goes. But
right.
I'll tell you, we were talking before about these big 6 publishers and things like that, and the other lock they have is on distribution.
Yep.
That's the other hard part. To me, it's you got to get into Baker and Taylor. You got to get into God, it's literally on the tip of my tongue. A Books. Oh well. Ingraham. Aha. There you go. You gotta get into those guys.
Right.
Because otherwise nobody will be able to find your book. Because those are the wholesalers. That's who they order the books from.
Right. And here's what's going to happen. Within 10 years, you're only going to have 2 places where you can get books. You're either going to get them from Amazon or you're going to get them from Google. I mean, those will be the 2 desktop winners in this whole publishing thing. And people who are paying attention are watching these larger conglomerates buy up, all of these sites that, that do independent work. Goodreads used to be independent, and I believe it's now
Amazon.
HarperCollins? Amazon?
No,
Amazon has Goodreads now. So and you know what? I don't want to. You don't sound like the kind of person who's going to want to do this, but I've had people pick fights with me about the fact that they said so and so and so and so is the greatest thing since sliced bread for publishing, and that's just like anything else. There is no one perfect answer for everybody. And I've seen more than one person get kind of screwed because they didn't pay attention. They didn't have a lawyer look over their contract. They didn't know about certain clauses. And you know what? I used to feel bad for those kind of people. But, if you're that damn stupid, if you're that stupid that you won't take care of yourself and you won't look out for yourself, then at this point with my old-ass self, I figured you got what you deserved. I can't care about you anymore because, it's the whole world out there is tilted against us as creatives, as content creators. And the fact of the matter is nothing gets done. Movies don't get made. Comic books don't grow. News stories don't come up without creatives. And yet creatives are really at the poopy end of the stick in just about every part of the business spectrum.
And that's because creatives are so busy being creative that they have no head. They're so busy being creative that the business side of it just totally escapes them. I mean, look, I'm an attorney, right? There is no way I would take take somebody else's publishing contract and sign it without having an intellectual property lawyer look at it.
Right.
I mean,
but again,
and just because I know a little bit of contract law doesn't mean anything because it's a totally different animal than your basic contract.
Right, and they play us. They play on our desperation. They
do.
Play on our need to be accepted, our need to be stroked, our need to, all of these. I look at some people and how desperate they are. And I just can't help but feel sorry for them because that desperation is what pushes people into making bad decisions. I didn't know you were an attorney, by the way. So what other accolades do you have? I've got some other questions, but I'm just kind of curious. I'm not an attorney, but I play one in my house.
Right. Basically, yeah. I got these 2 pieces of paper on my wall that say I'm an attorney, but personally, I'm not sure.
I'm supposed to be a clinical psychologist. Yeah. No, I'm a great clinical psychologist because I can't stand to listen to other people's problems. You got a problem, you need a friend, get a dog. But it's nice to know that we accomplished something, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I got to say one thing. I mean, one thing about being an attorney, it's certainly funding my nascent writing career, my nascent publishing company.
Well, then it sounds like you're practicing.
Yeah, I work for.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah, I guess I mistook it. I'm sorry. So you are what kind of law do you specialize in? Or are you a general practitioner?
I'm a policy lawyer. I write. I work for an organization of state governments, and I do stuff like write model legislation, do analyses of federal legislation and how it impacts the state. Things like that. But
wow.
no, I'm not one of those people. No, people say, "Well, I got a brother." It's like, no, I don't want to know about your brother. No, I don't want to. I don't want to know about your tax problem. You know,
my daughter has an eating disorder, and you've got you're a clinical psychologist. What's your recommendation? Well, I recommend you go find somebody who really can deal with her problem because I'm not your guy. That's about the extent of it for me. But as far as policy law is concerned, people also have a tendency to underrate the importance of that entire industry, and it is an industry because you've got people like ALEC, the American Legislative
I know who they
Exchange
are.
Council.
Trust me, I know who they are.
I was just putting that out there for other people who may not know, but these are the people who have extended the privilege of white cops killing unarmed and innocent black people to civilians. They gave that privilege to civilians with the Stand Your Ground laws. Now, a white man anywhere can kill a black man, and all he has to say was, "Ooh, I feared for my life," because black folks are scary. People don't understand that policy law is very important in this country because of how it is used. So my hat's off for you if you're working for the good guys, because there's not a lot of them out there. Yeah. So, I think your dream is like my dream, to get to the point where your creative endeavors, your writing and your publishing can be your primary source of income, and you don't have to, I don't want to say moonlight because it's not really moonlighting, but when you have a gig that pays your bills, but you, in your heart, the creative part is what really drives your soul. I think we all want to get to that point. Do you have in your mind, I know you have the desire, but do you have like a schedule, kind of like a tentative schedule of how you're going to get to that independent part? You mentioned, a couple years now or less before you start taking on other, or a short amount of time before you start taking on other creatives.
Well, one of the things I am looking into is retirement, early retirement.
Sure.
And, I'm working on getting my ducks in a row. Yeah. But that's an option.
I'm not going to ask how old you are, but, are you talking about in a decade or 2 decades, or what do you...
No, I'm talking about in a couple of years.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So,
but you're not going to retire. See, that's a lie.
Well,
you're not going to retire because you're going to be especially if you start taking on clients and really helping them navigate, the raging waters of the publishing industry. Are you really do you really think you're going to retire, or are you just going to be less dependent upon day-to-day billing in order to pay your bills?
I'm going to be less dependent. When I say retire, I'm talking about retiring from my day job.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm seriously looking at that. If I can do it, then I will. I mean, you
right.
know, if I can retire in a couple of years, then I will. Because
Sure.
you know, I mean, this, you know, Black Rose Press is something that it started out as a channel for me to publish my own books.
Mhm.
But then I started looking around me and listening to people.
Like in the industry, you mean?
Like in the industry, and listening
Okay.
to black people, black speculative fiction writers.
Right.
And I thought to myself, you know, there's a real need out here. These people need to be represented. And, you know, if I can do that, then I would like to do that. I mean, I remember this one, I was at this convention, and I forget the name of the panel, but basically it was people of color who write or something like that. And I'll never forget what this one woman said. She said, self-publishing is not a stigma in the black community because that's the only way we can get published.
True. Yeah.
And ding! That's when the idea was born that I could do this. I can do this. I can help people of color. I can help people of color get published, not just black people, but I can help people of color get published. Because where are the Asians? I mean, we already know there's lots of.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was raising my hand. I didn't say anything out loud, but yeah, I'm raising my hand because I'm Asian, and you know. But you're right.
But who else?
But you're
William?
right. No, but here's the deal. What you're talking about is the true essence of entrepreneurship, and that is find a niche that is not being served, then get in and serve it well. And that's the essence of entrepreneurship.
And that's what I want to do. I mean, you know, not just to be an entrepreneur, but to actually be of service.
Right.
You know, to people who are woefully underrepresented in the genre.
Mhm.
You know, like I said earlier, I am tired of there can be only one. No, that's not true.
Well, I think the best part of what has happened, especially it's been accelerated since the new millennium started, is the fact that the self-publishing services that are out there for books, for comics, for whatever art, and even there's a little bit of that in the music world, but I think I saw another statistic in America. 99% of all the music in America that's played on the radio is controlled by one company, and that's frightening. No, two companies. But where it used to be that restrictive for publishing novels and comics, the print-on-demand services and even the a la carte services of editing, of artwork, and things like that have given a whole new, it's not even a generation, has opened up the ability to get your work at least into other people's hands. Now, again, the marketing part is, of course, the big hurdle, but you can get your work into other people's hands because the hurdles, the threshold to getting your work produced is much, much lower.
Right. That's exactly right. And what I see, I was talking about this with a friend of mine, and she says, have you got your team assembled, your in-house team?
Right.
There is going to be no in-house team. I'm going to have a network of relationships with people.
Right. Paying for a la carte services is the
Yes.
model to go for. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't afford to have an in-house team, and and there are a lot of folks out here who don't want to be. They want to do what they love, but they don't want to be a part of an in-house team.
Right.
You know, they want to do it freelance, and so you develop a relationship with these people. I like to, again, I'm with my own book. I'm, experimenting, but one of the things about my work in progress is that the native people speak Swedish. So
wait, the native people, where do they live?
They live on a planet called Paris.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I thought when you said native people, of course, I automatically think, oh, the native people, like the Indians here in the in the. Well, no, I admit I'm Earth-centric. I try to be a little more cosmopolitan than that, but okay, so the native peoples.
The native people, the Hakoi, as I call them, their native tongue, their native tongue is Swedish.
And what color are they?
I'm sorry, no, they are bronze.
Bronze people.
Bronze colored, yes. And so I needed to find an editor who was fluent in Swedish.
Ah.
Because I don't trust internet translators. And I
get what you're saying.
I found an editor who was he's Swedish. He's fluent, obviously, in Swedish, but he's also fluent in English, and he's doing the editing.
That's excellent. But see, that's
now,
the thing.
And now, depending on, how this relationship works out, just because another book might not have any Swedish in it doesn't mean he can't edit it. I mean, I may end up developing a relationship with this guy.
Right.
So, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I mean, and rather than having it, just have a network of relationships and more than one editor. I mean, I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket, but have a network of people that you can use, to do X, Y, and Z.
And that's a benefit to him. That's a benefit because you can feed him clients that, from even, if somebody comes to you and says, hey, I need such and such edited, there's a referral there, and that's the benefit of a la carte networking. You don't have to pay somebody a salary. You pay them for the work that they do. And some people prefer that because it allows them to keep their own independence. And you know what? The most important thing that people don't think about, is the ability to say no.
Exactly.
And that's just as important as being able to have the ability to say yes.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's why I was saying I wouldn't have just the one editor. I'd have a whole network of them.
Right.
You busy? Can you do this right now?
Well, it definitely sounds like you've got your model thought out well, and you've already identified the pitfalls for any new startup, and that is undercapitalization and having a whole bunch of people sitting around that have to be paid that aren't doing anything. We call it the MC Hammer model.
The MC Hammer model?
Oh yeah, he was paying all his people, his road people, even while they weren't on the road.
You're kidding.
Look, all right, let me just say this. This is a little bit off topic, but for people who come into a lot of money, let's say, for the sake of argument, you won the lottery. And this is really, really, really important. If you win the lottery and you don't go and get financial help before you even go down there and get your ticket turned in, you're a fool. Because here's the thing. I've told everybody I know, if you ever get a whole lot of money coming to you, I'm bringing you to my house, I'm taping you to a chair, and you have to watch every single episode of VH1's Behind the Music, because that's all the nonsense that you are going to have to avoid doing. And
Right.
people laugh, but, I mean, MC Hammer buys a $10 million house. He pays his entire stage crew, backup dancers, musicians, what have you, when they're not on tour. That doesn't make any sense.
That's crazy.
You can't pay an entourage like that when there's no money coming in. Yeah, here, somebody in the chat room said Hammer had 200 people on his payroll at one point.
What?
That's a lot of money, and that's not even good business. I mean, stop and think about how many people start a business, and this is the hint, wink, wink, nod to you, Roxanne. How many people start a business and don't do a business plan?
Oh, I imagine there are lots. I imagine there are lots.
Most, 98%. 98% of black folks do not write a business plan. And then they wonder why their business fails after, before the first year is up. And the biggest reason why is not so much the plan itself, but it's because they didn't have what the plan helped them do. And most businesses die in the first year because of undercapitalization.
Mm-hmm.
Every business should be capitalized to the extent that you can run your business for a whole year without making
any money.
Single nickel.
Yeah.
You have to have a year's worth of money banked in order to start a business. And people go, man, that's crazy. I'll be making money as soon as I open the door. And I go, well, first of all, you borrowed money to get where you are, and second of all, you're probably not going to make enough to make your dreams come true, right off the bat, because you have to build clientele.
Right.
But undercapitalization is a big thing, and people don't write business plans.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want to brag, but I'm going to brag just for a second. Last year I wrote a 3-page executive summary, and I got $5 million in startup funding.
Mm-hmm.
Just from the executive summary. And people go, oh, that's crazy. But no. People see that sort of thing so seldom that when you do it, they can see that you know what you're going to do with their money. That's the other thing. Can he pay me back? I don't know how much you're going to borrow to get your company up, but from what I know about you, I know that you're going to have not only a restitution, a payback schedule, but I would imagine that knowing you, especially knowing your legal training, you are also going to build in an exit strategy. Most people don't think about that, too. They don't even know what that is, an exit strategy.
Going bankrupt.
That means, like, when I go home at night, no. An exit strategy, so how you can get the most out of your company and maybe even retire off of it.
Right.
So, starting a business is not an inconsiderable thing. And it sounds very much to me like you are going about it, and I don't mean this from an egomaniacal point of view that I know everything. I certainly don't know everything, otherwise I wouldn't be doing this show every Friday night. But the fact of the matter, well, no, it's true. If I had friends or someplace to go or the ankle bracelet off, I wouldn't be doing this. But the serious part about this is that it takes planning, and even if you plan on writing a book, people don't realize that you have just started a business.
Right.
So, and I go, well, did you write a business plan for how you're going to get yourself published? You go, what? I mean, they're scratching their head like I'm crazy. But anytime you're creative, you write a book, you decide you're going to do a comic book, you do an anthology of short stories. Now, somebody says, I thought you were doing the show because you know everything. Man, if I knew everything, y'all never would have met me. But seriously, if you don't, what is it? If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. Is that the saying? I'm not sure.
Yes. Yes, it is.
And it's so important. So, I mean, I'm gratified to hear what you're doing. And I mean, you kind of joke that, well, one day you'd like to see William Hayashi's books next to Isaac Asimov's and things like that. And those are the kinds of things that only a publisher can do for an author. First of all, most publishing companies won't talk directly to an author, especially the Big Six. The Big Six won't talk to you at all. You have to have an agent. And agents get mad when I say this, but the catch-22 is you have to have an agent in order to get a publisher, but you have to have already published in order to get an agent. And that's a tough catch-22 to get in there, because agents don't want to do the heavy lifting of bringing a brand new person, to lift them up and get them that visibility, because it costs a lot of money.
And
to
then,
get go ahead.
Then I, in doing some research for the Underground, when I was, working on the Underground, trying to get it published, a lot of agents don't consider self-publishing to be published.
That's true. Well, there's an arrogance in there, because they have to believe in their minds that if they don't do it, it hasn't been done.
Right.
You know what I mean? If an agent didn't publish Discovery, then I didn't publish Discovery. Then Discovery's not published.
Right.
So yeah, and then the other part of it is, if you're fortunate to get an agent who can get you into a good publisher, again, going back to the whole ego part and the validation of self, a publisher is going to assign an editor to you. And the editor's job, bottom line, is to pee all over your stuff to make it partly theirs.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't realize that. They're so invested in, well, these are my words, and I'm not going to change a single word. Then you should not be looking for a publisher, because publishers, that's what they do. And a good editor can look at your book and can tell you, if they take on your book, exactly how many copies of your book are going to be sold.
Yes.
That's how good they are. They know that. And those are the kinds of things that you can't convey to an author very well. A lot of these, I use Ex Libris as my fulfillment house. A lot of people don't like them. But you know what? I've noticed the people who don't like them have really stupid expectations about what Ex Libris should have done, or what their contract was, or whatever. But having said that, when I call them or they call me, and they're handled out of the Philippines, they are so obsequious. They are so fawning, and that's partly the Filipino whatever. But because authors are effing crazy. Okay, authors are nuts. I've managed to break through some of that and talk to them and say, okay, first of all, quit calling me by Mr. Call me William. Don't thank me for everything. Let's just have a real conversation here. And they're like taken aback, because they don't get that. Authors are crazy because they don't know the industry. And if they don't know the industry, they have these really strange expectations. I'd say that about creatives. I was at a networking meeting for film, and a guy was asking Tim Kazurinsky, hey, if somebody buys your script, can you put a clause in the contract where you get to sit on set every day and critique, how they're handling your script? And I almost passed milk through my nose when the guy asked that, because he obviously had no idea. And authors are the same way, which is why publishers won't talk to them. I think it's good that people like you get into publishing, because being a published author and the publisher, you've seen everything from both sides. And I have to believe, first of all, you're not a stupid person. I have to believe that you're going to be a better publisher because you've seen it from both sides. But I would love to be a fly on the wall the first time you answer the phone from one of those crazy authors who has no idea what the industry is like, what the expectations are, and what roles everybody plays in it, and they get you on the phone and they start asking you some really crazy, wacky stuff. My advice to you is to take notes, because that's a book that you need to publish.
Yeah.
My life as an independent publisher. You say you think these guys who have crazy writers who are musicians and only want the yellow M&Ms and stuff like that. Let me tell you about Mrs. X, who came to me with a cookbook and said the following. Because the thing is most people don't study their own material. They don't study what's necessary to learn, even in an endeavor like becoming a published author. And I don't envy you that part of the business, because that's not going to be easy and it's not going to be fun. But hopefully, you're going to be able to give them a much better experience for having been on both sides of the fence.
Right. And, one of the things, at least, one of the things I plan to do, and I don't know how well this is going to work out, but
right.
One of the things I plan to do is, at least in the beginning, since I'll only have a few clients,
mm-hmm.
is to try to sit down and chat. Now, this is what you can expect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is reality time. This
right.
is what I'm going to do. This is what you can expect of me. And this is what I expect of you.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know how well that's going to work, but that's something I really want to do because, like we were saying before, authors need to understand that this is a business. They are in a business. They just don't fling words on paper or
right.
on the screen. I guess see, now I'm telling my age. You just don't fling words up on a screen. If you want other people to read those words, you've got to put on your business hat. And you have to know don't expect your publisher to do everything for you.
Right.
1, I'm not big enough. 2, I don't believe that's the way it should work. When you get as big as Stephen King, then you can have everybody else do whatever for you. But you're not there.
No, that's true. And one of the things that I ask other people about, and it seems pretty consistent, that it falls into the 80-20 rule, where 80% of what independent content creators do is the business of doing business, and 20% is the actual creative endeavor in order to qualify to get that business done.
That's right.
And I think that it's not that much different in terms of being a creative and having a publisher. I mean, some things are taken out of your hands, but you still have to write good stuff. You still have to go over your own work before you turn it over to an editor, unless you're very, very lucky and they go, oh, let's just take this turd and we'll turn it into gold, or however somebody's going to deal with a really good but really hard to deal with author. So I think that the strategy of being able to sit down and help people manage their expectations is going to be an important feature that you're going to provide for your clients. I wish that you get people who will listen to you.
Yeah.
And the other part of it is I hope that you're able to get people over a lot of the emotional humps that make it so hard for creatives to do what they're supposed to do, which is help them manage their expectations about their content, right. To manage their expectations about the fact that if I give you a criticism about your book, that doesn't mean I hate you and that your mother birthed a bad child, but what it means is there are probably some things that can make your work better, which means you'll be more popular and you'll sell more books, and help people get over the tendency to feel that any critique is some sort of invalidation of self, as we talked about at the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you're going to need the lawyering skills and probably an in-house counselor to help people emotionally get to the point. But I mean,
William, you looking for a job?
I don't like talking to people about their problems. Like I said, you need a friend, get a dog. I'm so close. I am so close to being that guy who says, "Get the hell off my lawn" when the kids walk by.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not your guy. But you've already identified that you need equal parts business acumen and an equal part of relationship management, customer relationship management.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, obviously both are important in order to have a great two-sided relationship. somebody mentioned in there that people don't read their contracts. That's true, they don't. But with you being the lawyer, you can insist on them finding their, having their own representation on, and say, no, I can't deal with you. I have to deal with your representative. And they go, well, why do I have to pay a lawyer? Can't you just give me the contract? And you go, you know what? I could, but do you know that that's not really ethical?
Right.
Even though it's legal for me to take advantage of you, it's not ethical, and I don't play that way. So
right.
I if you structure this well, maybe you will be putting my books next to Isaac Asimov's, and I can just say screw HarperCollins. So I think the coolest thing is that you stopped in at BlackScienceFictionSociety.com when you got there, whenever that was, way back when, and that you are a resource that people can at least reach in that forum, in that social networking site, and people should pay attention to what other people's expertise is, because we can all learn from each other.
That's true. That's very true.
There are some people who are hard-headed who believe they know everything, and I watch them get tripped up all the time. And the other thing is, what's that? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
Some people just believe that nobody else can offer them anything of value in their own lives. And I'll tell you right now, those are not the clients you want to have.
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not.
If you had, just thinking about where you are right now in terms of having built or starting to build your own publishing company, what is the best thing that you have discovered about deciding to do that? We have about 4 minutes left, but I mean, just what's the best part of you sitting back going, you know what, I'm going to be a publisher?
There's a peculiar sense of freedom. Freedom from having to worry about federal legislation.
Mm-hmm.
There's that freedom. And there is a freedom of working for myself. There is the freedom, I feel, of helping other people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a whole bunch of freedoms all bundled up into one package. And I really feel like, I really feel like I have a service to offer that can help people, that will help them grow as authors as well as people. I feel like what I'm doing is truly worthwhile. And I guess that pretty much sums it up.
And let's be honest, you have an opportunity to control your own revenue stream.
Right. Control my own destiny.
Yeah, for someone who wants to retire in a couple of years, hopefully.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully.
Or at least retire from the day gig and do the thing that you love.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so real quickly, what's the thing that you may be looking forward to the least? Because we still got a couple minutes here. I'm curious, as you sit there and you go, well, this is all going to be very good, but I'm going to really have to watch out for
dealing with marketers. Because that's what they are. That's what they do. They sell things, and they may be able to sell you something you don't need.
Or
I knew a
flat
guy.
out lie to you.
I knew a guy who was a hell of a marketer. This guy,
mm-hmm.
no kidding. This guy could sell refrigerators to Eskimos.
Mm-hmm.
And he when I used to do probate law years ago, he actually managed to talk the hospital down $8,000 for his cousin's final illness. And he just walked in and talked him down because he was personable. He was personable. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. He was just that personable that people just fell into his hands.
Mhm.
He was, and what did he do before he retired? He was a salesman, and that's what marketers are. They're salespeople.
Yeah.
But you have to make sure they don't get you. You know, that you're not so overcome with their blitz or their bling that you lose yourself in the process.
Yeah, and you know, creatives are, for the most part, very desperate people, and they're very, very easily led astray.
Yep.
And that's, yeah, I could see why that would be the one thing where you say, I just don't want to deal with those people at all.
Right.
Well, look, we have come to the top of our time, the end of our time here. For those of you who may have tuned in late, we've been talking to Roxanne Bland, author and nascent publisher, and should be looking for new blood very, very shortly. When do you think you'll have your second book out, by the way?
I'm planning on by Christmas, for the Christmas rush or whatever they call it, the Christmas season.
So figure December?
Which basically starts in October.
Oh, that quick. Okay, so you're going to try to finish up by the end of summer.
I'm hoping it'll be out by October, and just in time for the Christmas season.
Very nice. And is this in the same universe as Underground, or is this?
Oh no, it's a completely different.
It's completely different. Great.
Completely different.
So people will get an even better view of your creative mind.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for being here. This has been great. I mean, it's been easy, and it didn't seem like that amount of time. Jarvis can't dial in or hasn't called in, so I'm going to take over saying goodnight. I want to thank everybody who stuck around and listened to this live. I especially want to thank people who check this out as a podcast, and all of the people who helped make this possible, and all of the creatives who hang around and give of themselves at the Black Science Fiction Society.com. I would call it a social networking site. It really is. And I want to remind people that this show is live most every Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And, of course, obviously, as you follow the clock around, the time changes. And tell your friends, stop in if you want to read some of the best content, the newest, the freshest Black-themed content. Want to check it out. It's at BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. So on behalf of our administrator, our peerless leader, and the creator of BSFS, Jarvis Sheffield, I want to wish everybody a good evening. I want to thank you again. Yes,
William,
Roxanne?
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, absolutely.
Hi, Mom.
Are you going to have her listen, or is she listening now?
She's been listening.
Well, hey, Mom, I hope I treated your daughter well, and we'll talk later. And hang on. Don't hang up after I stop the show, just in case anybody in the chat room has anything else they want to put in there. Hey, even the inappropriate stuff for your adult-themed sex and things like that. So on behalf of Jarvis, everyone else, myself, thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will catch you on the next show. We'll 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 catch you on the next show.